Well, I appreciated very much Dr. Hardin sharing on a personal level about his experience, and I think that it underlines the importance for us who are Christians not to squelch the honest questions of our own children when they ask them. I know in our own life, I really encouraged my kids to ask the hard questions about the existence of God and what Christians believe, because I meet so many people as I travel speaking on different university campuses who have come from Christian backgrounds and who have lost their faith precisely because their questions as children were squelched and they were told, well, just believe, you just got to have faith. And I think it's so tragic because these questions are so easily answered. They are not difficult, I think, to answer, and I'll specifically address that question about who made God in a moment. But first, let's ask ourselves, have we still seen any good reasons to think scientific naturalism is true? Now, Dr. Hardin didn't disagree with the definition I gave of naturalism, that is to say that the natural world is all there is, and that we should only believe what can be scientifically proven. But I gave reasons as to why I thought both of those claims are untenable. Since science is by nature limited to the natural world, how could it possibly prove there's nothing beyond the natural world? I'm still waiting for an answer to that question. And secondly, I argued that it's far too restrictive to say that we should only believe what can be scientifically proven. There are vast realms of truth in ethics, aesthetics, metaphysics, science itself that can't be scientifically proven, but that we all accept and are rational in doing so. And then I argued, in fact, it's self-refuting to say you should only believe what can be scientifically proven. So I still think we've not seen any good reasons to think scientific naturalism is the truth, nor have we seen any refutation of those objections. Now, with respect to the signposts of transcendence that I offered, Dr. Hardin made some general comments, for example, saying that we should have nothing in words, the motto of the Royal Society. But of course, many of the members of the Royal Society, most when it was founded, who adopted that motto were themselves Christians. And they did not mean thereby to repudiate religion or Christianity. And in fact, in my first speech, that's why I specifically appealed to empirical evidence, not mere words. We looked at things like the origin of the universe in the Big Bang as a signpost of transcendence, the complex order that astrophysicists have discovered in the Big Bang, the existence of objective moral values in the world that we all experience, the historical evidence for the resurrection of Jesus, and then our experience of God Himself. In other words, I've appealed to a broad range of human experience, scientific, ethical, historical, personal, and all of these, I think, point beyond the natural world to something greater as its ground. Now, Dr. Hardin suggested that the word God has no meaning. Well, as an analytic philosopher, definition of terms is very important to me, and I think I would define the word God in the following way: a personal being who is omnipotent, omniscient, eternal, immaterial, and wholly good. And that's going to be my working definition of what I mean by God. So that's the definition I'm operating with. That's a Christian understanding of God. And if he thinks that that's incoherent, then I simply await the demonstration to hear why that is. Now, let's look then at those signposts of transcendence. First, I said the origin of the universe points beyond itself to something greater. And Dr. Hardin agreed that to say something came from nothing is just unacceptable. So there has to be a cause of the origin of the universe. But then he asks, well, who made God? Well, very simply, as I argued in my opening speech, as a cause of space and time itself, the cause of the universe must be an uncaused, immaterial, spaceless, and timeless being. In other words, nobody made God. God didn't come from anywhere. God is what philosophers call an absolutely necessary being. That is, a being which is eternal, uncaused, incorruptible, and indestructible. And I would argue that the origin of the universe points to its creation by such an entity. And there certainly is good empirical evidence for this origin. J.M. Wersinger, professor of physics at Auburn University, writing in the National Forum of 1996, says the following: At first, the scientific community was very reluctant to accept the idea of a birth of the universe. Not only did the Big Bang model seem to give in to the Judeo-Christian idea of a beginning of the world, but it also seemed to call for an act of supernatural creation. It took time, observational evidence, and careful verification of predictions made by the Big Bang model to convince the scientific community to accept the idea of a cosmic genesis. The Big Bang is a very successful model that imposed itself upon a reluctant scientific community. So I think we have good grounds for saying the universe has this absolute origin in which space, time, matter, and energy come to exist out of nothing, and that points beyond itself to its origin in a creator. Secondly, I argue that the complex order of the universe points to the intelligence of this creator because these initial conditions cannot be explained by scientific law because they are initial conditions just put in at the beginning, and the odds against them are so incalculable as to be incomprehensible, and thus the hypothesis of design seems eminently reasonable. Thirdly, remember I said the existence of objective moral values points to God. And again, it's hard to see on a naturalistic view how there could be objective moral values. J.P. Moreland, a philosopher, writes as following: "On an evolutionary secular scenario, human beings are nothing special. The universe came from a Big Bang. It evolved to us through a blind process of chance and necessity. There's nothing intrinsically valuable about human beings in terms of having moral, non-natural properties. The view that being human is special is guilty of speciesism, an unjustifiable bias toward one's own species." So on a naturalistic view, there's no reason to think human beings and their values are any more objective or important than guinea pigs or even mosquitoes. This is especially evident through two implications of a naturalistic worldview. First would be materialism. On a naturalistic view, you are just a collection of chemicals in a bag of skin. If a bomb blast destroys a child in Bosnia, all that's happened is that nature has rearranged the collocation of atoms that used to be a little girl. The other implication is determinism. If naturalism is true, then everything that we think and do is determined by our genetic makeup and the input of our five senses. There is no freedom of the will. Our actions have no more moral significance than having a toothache or a tree growing a branch. So it's very difficult to see how there could be objective moral values on naturalism. And yet I think it's evident that moral values do exist, that certain things like love are really good, and that there's an objective difference between loving and nurturing a child and torturing and abusing that child. That points beyond the world to God. Signpost number 4 was the resurrection of Jesus. I shared 3 established facts recognized by historians. I don't know how the naturalist can explain these, frankly. And finally, one's immediate experience of God. I've come to have an experience of God in my own life. He's real to me. I experience God as a living reality. In the absence of any good arguments for atheism, why should I deny my experience and think that I'm having a delusion? In the absence of arguments for atheism, it seems to me that I'm quite within my rights to believe that, in fact, my experience of God is veridical. So on the basis of all of these signposts of transcendence, it seems to me quite reasonable to believe that the natural world is not all there is, that there's more, that there is a creator, a designer, a God who has revealed himself in Jesus Christ.
Thank you, Professor Craig.